The first thing I saw was the wallpaper. Pink. Little roses tied up with pale blue ribbons. My childhood bedroom. Girly, frilly, inferior. It was always subtly less than Ariana's room next door. Smaller. Less sunlight. Cheaper furniture. A constant, quiet reminder of my place in the family hierarchy. Second best. The spare. I sat up in bed, the pastel pink comforter pooling around my waist. My hand went to my face. Smooth skin. No lines etched by worry, by sleepless nights, by the slow, agonizing erosion of hope. 17. I was 17 again. I walked over to the mirror, my bare feet silent on the plush carpet. The girl staring back at me was young, softer. But the eyes were wrong. They were my eyes. The eyes of a 27-year-old woman trapped in a teenager's body. Haunted, hollow, filled with a knowledge that no 17-year-old should possess. 10 years, I thought. The words a silent whisper in the too quiet room. I have 10 years to undo the damage, to rewrite the script. The memories flooded back, raw and sharp, like shards of glass in my chest. The betrayal, the accusations, the utter, soul-crushing despair. My family, my own mother, had chosen Ariana over me. They'd thrown me away, discarded me like I was nothing. And then, the darkness. The cold, empty darkness. The relief of oblivion. I remembered the feeling, that feeling that had been present all of my last life, worthlessness. But this time it was different. The pain was still there, a burning ember in my gut. But it was fuel now, not a crippling weight. It was fuel for the cold, hard resolve that had taken root in my soul. They chose Ariana, I thought, my reflection staring back at me, unwavering. They always chose Ariana. This time, they can have her. I choose myself. Breakfast was a reenactment, a play I'd already seen, a script I knew by heart. The long, polished dining table, the gleaming silverware, the scent of freshly brewed coffee, and Valeria's expensive perfume. Valeria, my mother, beautiful, elegant, her blonde hair perfectly coiffed, her smile radiant. But the radiance was never for me, it was always for Ariana. Ariana, my younger sister, the golden child, the princess, the center of their universe. She was sitting at the table, already dressed for the day, even though it was barely 7 a.m. Getting ready for her sweet 16, the biggest event, a large party. Her 16th birthday party. She chattered excitedly about the party, about the dress, about the guests. She was a whirlwind of charm and energy, demanding attention and receiving it effortlessly. I sat quietly, picking at my food. I was largely ignored, a silent observer in my own family. I was expected to be helpful, to be grateful, to be invisible. "Celeste, darling," Valeria said, her voice dripping with a saccharine sweetness that never quite reached her eyes. "Have you thought about what you're going to do after graduation? Perhaps a secretarial course, something practical?" Practical. The word hung in the air, a subtle dismissal of my dreams, my aspirations, my art. "Or maybe you could assist in the shop," Ariana chimed in, a kind offer. In my past life, I'd swallowed the insult, mumbled something about considering my options. This time, I simply smiled. "I'm still exploring my options, Mother," I said, my voice even. Ariana, sensing an opportunity to further diminish me, added, "Don't worry, Celeste. Not everyone can be artistic. It's okay to be ordinary." She delivered the line with a perfectly executed pout, a performance of sympathy that was utterly false. "Enjoy your reign, Ariana," I thought, the cold fury a familiar comfort. "It won't last." Every slight, every dismissal, every sacrifice I'd made, it was all fuel for the fire. Then came the dress. Valeria, with a dramatic flourish, presented Ariana with a gown fit for a princess. Silk, lace, hand-beaded details. It was exquisite. It was everything I'd ever dreamed of, everything I knew I'd never be allowed to have. "Oh, Mother, it's perfect!" Ariana squealed, throwing her arms around Valeria. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." And then, as an afterthought, Valeria turned to me. "Celeste, dear, I found this for you." She held up a dress, a faded blue thing that had probably belonged to Ariana years ago. It's perfectly suitable, don't you think? Suitable, not beautiful, not special, just suitable. Ariana, playing her part to perfection, chimed in, "Oh, Celeste, you can borrow some of my jewelry, and maybe we can do something with your hair." The offer was a thinly veiled insult, a reminder of my supposed inferiority. "Thank you, Mother," I said, accepting the dress with a quiet smile. "It's lovely." The sarcasm was a secret, a small act of defiance. "Wear your pretty dress, Ariana," I thought, my internal voice cold and hard. "It won't save you." After breakfast, I retreated to my room, claiming I needed to study. The books were there, the textbooks for my classes, but they were just props. My real work was hidden away. I pulled out a large portfolio from under my bed. Inside were my drawings, my paintings, my escape. They were filled with raw emotion, with a darkness that mirrored my own inner turmoil. Landscapes twisted into grotesque shapes, portraits with eyes that screamed of pain and betrayal, abstract forms that pulsed with a barely contained fury. My art was my voice, my rebellion, my secret weapon. I opened my laptop, a cheap, second-hand model I'd saved up for months to buy. I logged onto the website for the Global Arts Initiative, a prestigious scholarship program for young artists. It was a long shot, a dream I'd almost abandoned in my past life. But this time, I wouldn't let anything stop me. I carefully filled out the online application form, my fingers flying across the keyboard. I uploaded scans of my best artwork, my artist statement, my letters of recommendation. Ms. Evans, my art teacher, had been my one true champion. She saw my talent, my passion, my potential. She'd written a glowing recommendation vouching for my abilities, my dedication, my character. I'd even managed to sneak into the headmaster's office during lunch and had him sign a letter of recommendation, too. I hit submit. A thrill of defiance, of hope surged through me. This was it, my escape route, my chance to build a life, a real life, on my own terms. I closed the laptop and stood in front of the mirror. The 17-year-old girl stared back at me, her eyes still haunted, but now there was something else there. A spark, a flicker of determination. I made a vow, a silent promise to myself. I would play the part. I would be the dutiful, self-sacrificing daughter. I would let Valeria and Ariana believe they were in control, that they had me exactly where they wanted me. But I would be building my own future, brick by brick, in secret. I would be nurturing my talent, honing my skills, preparing for my escape. I would not fight for their love. I would not seek their approval. I would not waste another tear, another ounce of energy on a family that had never valued me, and I would simply disappear. They'll never see me coming, I thought, a cold smile playing on my lips. And by the time they do, it will be too late. Ariana's Sweet 16 party was a spectacle, a testament to Valeria's obsession with appearances, with social status, with keeping up with the Joneses, even if it meant bankrupting the family. The house was overflowing with people, Atmi Sbayan relatives, business associates, friends, who were more like acquaintances, all vying for Valeria's attention. The decorations were over the top, the food extravagant, the music loud and insistent. I played my part. I helped with the preparations, arranging flowers, setting out hors d'oeuvres, fetching drinks. I smiled. I made polite conversation. I complimented Ariana on her dress, her hair, her everything. I faded into the background, a silent, unobtrusive presence, a shadow in my own home. It was nauseating. The sheer superficiality of it all, the way people fawned over Valeria, showering her with compliments, desperate for her approval. The way Ariana preened and posed, soaking up the attention like a sponge. She was in her element, the center of the universe, the queen bee. I watched them, observing their interactions, their carefully constructed facades. Ariana, for all her charm, was a master manipulator. She knew how to play people, how to get what she wanted. She'd smile sweetly at one moment, then whisper a cutting remark the next. She was a viper in a princess gown. This is their world, I thought, a cold detachment settling over me. A world of lies, of pretense, of superficiality. I don't belong here. I never did. And then came the sacrifice. It happened a few days after the party, the house still littered with the remnants of the celebration. Valeria called me into her study, her expression carefully composed. "Celeste, darling," she said, her voice dripping with that false sweetness. "We need to talk about finances." I knew what was coming. I'd lived through this before. "The party was rather more expensive than we anticipated," she continued, avoiding my gaze. "And with the business, well, things are a little tight right now." She paused, letting the implication hang in the air. "We were hoping," she said, finally looking at me, "that you might contribute. Your college fund. It's quite substantial. And Ariana, well, she needs a new car, and her debutante ball is coming up." Ariana, who had been lurking in the doorway, chimed in. "Oh, Celeste, I'd never ask you to do this. It's just, Mother is so worried, and you know how important these things are. It's our family's reputation, after all." Her eyes, however, gleamed with a predatory triumph. In my past life, I'd argued. I'd pleaded. I'd tried to reason with them. I'd pointed out that the college fund was mine, that I'd earned it, that it was my future. It had been a futile effort. They'd worn me down, guilt-tripped me, manipulated me until I'd finally given in. This time, I didn't even hesitate. "Of course, Mother," I said, my voice calm and even. "Ariana's happiness is all that matters." The sarcasm was a razor blade, hidden beneath a layer of silk. Valeria beamed, relieved and triumphant. "Oh, Celeste, you're such a good daughter. I knew you'd understand." Ariana gave me a condescending hug. "Thank you, Celeste. You're the best sister ever." I didn't flinch. I didn't react. I just let them have their victory. Because I knew. It was a hollow one. A few weeks later, the letter arrived. A thick, cream-colored envelope with the logo of the Global Arts Initiative. My acceptance letter, a full scholarship, covering tuition, travel, living expenses, everything. I hid the letter, my heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and vindication. This was it, my escape, my ticket to a new life, a life where I mattered, where my talent was valued. I started making preparations, quietly, secretly. I obtained a passport using the excuse of a school trip. I researched the program, the city where I'd be studying, the courses I'd be taking. I contacted the organizers, confirming my acceptance, arranging the details, and then the sabotage. I found it by accident. A crumpled piece of paper, carelessly discarded in Ariana's wastebasket. A note, in Ariana's handwriting, outlining her plan. "Alter Celeste's transcripts," it read. "Make it look like she's failing. No university will accept her. She'll be stuck here. Forever." It was exactly what she'd done in my past life. The act that had effectively trapped me, that had crushed my dreams, that had set me on the path to my eventual destruction. My hands trembled with rage, but I didn't confront her. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply took a deep breath and put the note back where I'd found it. Because I was ready for her. I'd already anticipated this. Weeks ago, I'd gone to the school principal, Mr. Harrison, a kindly old man who had always been supportive of my academic achievements. I'd confided in him, expressing my concerns about my sister's jealousy. I'd asked him to make certified copies of my real transcripts to keep them safe, just in case. I'd also confided in Ms. Evans, my art teacher. She'd been furious, outraged on my behalf. She'd written a powerful letter of recommendation, vouching for my character, my talent, my academic abilities. She'd even offered to send it directly to any universities I was applying to, bypassing the school's official channels. I'd sent the certified transcripts, Miss Evans's letter, and a detailed explanation of my family situation directly to the Global Arts Initiative. I'd left nothing to chance. "You think you can control my future, Ariana?" I thought, a cold smile playing on my lips. "Think again." My escape wasn't just about running away, it was about creating, about expressing the emotions I couldn't voice, the pain I couldn't show. Using a small inheritance from my maternal grandmother, money Valeria didn't even know existed, I rented a tiny, run-down art studio in a forgotten corner of the city. It was far from the opulent world of the Liangs, a place where I could be myself, where I could be free, and I started to create. I worked under a pseudonym, Phoenix. It was a symbol of my rebirth, of my rising from the ashes of my former life. My art was dark, emotional, raw. It was filled with the pain, the anger, the betrayal I'd experienced. But it was also filled with hope, with a fierce determination to survive, to thrive. I started accepting online commissions, small at first, then larger, more ambitious projects. I built a following slowly but surely. People were drawn to my work, to its honesty, its intensity, its raw power. They didn't know who I was, but they felt something. They connected with the emotions I poured onto the canvas. Even Mr. Huang, I reached out to Mr. Huang online through an anonymous account. He recognized a spark, an undeniable talent. We corresponded, he offered advice, mentorship, but I never revealed my true identity. And all the while, I was gathering evidence. My phone became my weapon. I recorded conversations, capturing Valeria's dismissive comments, Ariana's cruel taunts, their casual disregard for my feelings, my dreams, my very existence. I documented their financial mismanagement, the way they were squandering the family business, the way they were prioritizing their own lavish lifestyle over the well-being of their employees. I found evidence of their lies, their schemes, their petty cruelties, and I stored this evidence in multiple locations, on encrypted hard drives, in cloud storage, even on physical USB drives hidden in the lining of my old discarded suitcase. I was building a case, a fortress of truth that would one day bring their world crashing down. Every word, every action is a piece of the puzzle, I thought, my resolve hardening with each passing day. And I'm putting it all together. I was patient, I was meticulous, and I was utterly, completely unstoppable. The Rowan family business, Rowan's Chic, a chain of high-end boutiques that catered to the city's elite, was starting to crumble. It wasn't a sudden collapse, but a slow, agonizing decline. Years of Valeria's mismanagement, her outdated ideas, her refusal to adapt to the changing market, were finally taking their toll. And Ariana's extravagant spending, the designer clothes, the expensive jewelry, the endless parties, was like pouring gasoline on a fire. Valeria, predictably, was frantic. Her entire identity, her sense of self-worth, was tied to their wealth, their social standing. The thought of losing it all terrified her. She became increasingly desperate, clinging to the illusion of control, even as everything around her was falling apart. And of course, she turned to me. "Celeste, darling," she said, her voice tight with a forced cheerfulness. "Oh, we need to talk about the business. You've always had a good head for numbers. Perhaps you could help out a little more?" Help out meant taking on more responsibilities, working longer hours, essentially becoming an unpaid employee, a glorified servant. It meant sacrificing even more of my time, my energy, my life, for a family that had never appreciated me. In my past life, I'd agreed. I'd worked myself to the bone, trying to salvage the sinking ship, believing that if I just worked hard enough, I could earn their love, their respect. This time, I simply smiled. "Of course, Mother," I said. "Anything for the family." Ariana, sensing her mother's vulnerability, her desperation, became even more unbearable. Her cruelty escalated, fueled by a mixture of insecurity and a desperate need to maintain her position as the favored daughter. She mocked my lack of ambition, my plainness, my failure to attract a wealthy husband. "Honestly, Celeste," she'd say, loud enough for everyone to hear, "you're almost 18. Don't you think it's time you started thinking about your future? You can't just spend all your time hiding away in your room drawing." She started spreading rumors, subtle at first, then increasingly malicious. She'd whisper to our few remaining friends, hinting that I was unstable, difficult, jealous of her success. She was trying to isolate me, to cut me off from any support system I might have. "You think you're winning, Ariana?" I thought, watching her perform her little dramas. "You have no idea what's coming." The theft accusation. It was almost comical in its predictability. It was a scene straight out of our past life, a script I knew by heart. Ariana, fueled by a cocktail of jealousy and desperation, decided to frame me. She planned to steal some valuable jewelry from the family safe, a diamond necklace and a pair of earrings that had belonged to our grandmother, and plant them in my room. It was a classic move, designed to ruin my reputation, to solidify her position as the good daughter and to ensure that I would be completely dependent on them. But I was ready. I'd been waiting for this. The first step was the jewelry itself. I'd already secretly replaced the real necklace and earrings with high-quality replicas. The originals were safely tucked away in a safety deposit box, along with other crucial documents and evidence. The second step was the camera. I'd installed a tiny hidden camera in my room disguised as a smoke detector. It was motion activated, recording everything that happened in the room. The third step was the diary. I'd started keeping a journal, a carefully crafted record of my worries about Ariana. I wrote about her erratic behavior, her increasingly extravagant spending, her obsession with social status. I even confided my fears that she might be unwell. It was all lies, of course, but it was believable lies. And I made sure to accidentally leave the diary open on my desk where anyone could see it. The discovery was a performance worthy of an Oscar. Ariana stumbled upon the stolen jewelry while helping me tidy my room, as if she'd ever lifted a finger to help anyone. "Celeste!" she gasped, her voice a perfect mixture of shock and disappointment. "What is this?" She held up the fake necklace, her eyes wide with feigned horror. Valeria, who had been conveniently nearby, rushed into the room, her face a mask of outrage. "Celeste, how could you? This is your grandmother's necklace, and how could you steal from your own family?" I played my part, the bewildered, heartbroken daughter. I don't know what you're talking about," I stammered. I would never steal anything, I swear." I denied the accusations, but I didn't fight too hard. I let them believe they'd won. I let them build their case, their web of lies. I even shed a few tears for good measure. The public shaming followed swiftly. Ariana, encouraged by Valeria, leaked the story to our social circle, and then, inevitably, to the local media. It was a small, human interest piece at first, a footnote in the gossip columns, but it was enough. The whispers started, the stares, the averted gazes. Friends stopped calling, invitations dried up, I was ostracized, condemned, branded a thief. Valeria and Ariana basked in the attention. They played the roles of the wronged, heartbroken family, offering carefully worded statements to the press, expressing their disappointment and their hope that I would seek help. They thought they'd destroyed me. They thought they'd won. They were wrong. It was time for my reveal. First, the video. I released the footage from my hidden camera, showing Ariana, clear as day, planting the fake jewelry in my room. I sent it to the local news outlets, to our friends, to everyone who had condemned me. Then, the transcripts. I provided copies of my real academic records, certified by the school principal, proving Ariana's sabotage. I included Ms. Evans' glowing letter of recommendation, a testament to my character and my talent. Next, the scholarship. I released a statement formally announcing my acceptance into the Global Arts Initiative, the full scholarship, the opportunity of a lifetime, and finally, the art. I revealed my identity as Phoenix, the anonymous artist whose work had been gaining international acclaim. I released high-resolution images of my paintings, my drawings, my sculptures. I let the world see the talent, the passion, the voice that Valeria and Ariana had tried so hard to silence. The effect was explosive. It was like dropping a bomb on their carefully constructed world. The truth, the undeniable, irrefutable truth, shattered their lies, exposed their cruelty, and turned the tables completely. And the tables turned. Fast, brutal, beautiful. The public reaction to my revelations, the video of Ariana planting the fake jewelry, the proof of her academic sabotage, my scholarship, my art, my truth, was like a tidal wave. It swept away Valeria and Ariana's carefully constructed world, leaving them exposed, vulnerable, and utterly ruined. They were revealed for what they were: liars, manipulators, frauds. Their social circle, that shallow, fickle group of friends who had once fawned over them, abandoned them instantly. Their business partners, sensing the impending disaster, distanced themselves, cutting off contracts, calling in loans. Ariana's friends, the ones she'd cultivated, the ones she'd used, turned on her with a viciousness that was almost shocking. They revealed her cruel jokes, her selfish demands, her constant put-downs. They shared stories of her manipulations, her lies, her betrayals. Valeria was besieged. Reporters hounded her, demanding answers, demanding explanations. Creditors called, threatening foreclosure, demanding repayment. The society she had so desperately craved, the world of wealth and privilege she had clung to so fiercely, turned its back on her. She was an outcast, a pariah, a cautionary tale. The legal battle? It was over before it even began. Valeria, in a desperate attempt to salvage something, anything, threatened to sue me. She claimed I'd defamed her, that I'd stolen the jewelry, that I was mentally unstable. She tried to force me to retract my statements, to apologize, to set the record straight. I simply smiled. "Mother," I said, my voice calm and even, "I've already consulted with lawyers, multiple lawyers. Any legal action you take will only expose you and Ariana to further scrutiny. And I assure you, you do not want that." I then revealed the existence of the recordings, the countless hours of conversations I'd captured on my phone, documenting their cruelty, their manipulations, their financial mismanagement. I mentioned the meticulously organized files, the multiple backups, the evidence I'd gathered proving their every lie. Valeria paled. She understood finally that she was defeated. And then, the final twist. The hidden estate. My father, a quiet, unassuming man who had always seemed overshadowed by Valeria's forceful personality, had been more perceptive than anyone realized. He'd seen the darkness in Valeria and Ariana, the greed, the selfishness, the utter lack of empathy, and he'd taken steps to protect me. Before his death years ago, he'd secretly transferred ownership of a significant family asset, a beautiful, historic vineyard in Italy, to me. It was a place he'd loved, a place he'd dreamed of restoring to its former glory. He'd left instructions in his will, carefully worded, legally binding, ensuring that Valeria and Ariana would never be able to touch it. But I had no intention of keeping it for myself. The vineyard, the estate, it wasn't about the money, it was about something more. I'd already transferred the entire property to a charitable trust, the Phoenix Foundation, dedicated to supporting young artists from disadvantaged backgrounds, giving them the opportunities I'd been denied. And the trust agreement? It explicitly excluded Valeria and Ariana from receiving any benefit, any support, any penny. Soon the media got wind of the full story and I was asked for interviews. I agreed, stepping in front of the camera for the first time as Celeste, not Phoenix. My mother and sister thought they would be able to control me, to ruin me. I stated, my voice calm, firm, confident. But they were wrong. I looked straight into the camera as I knew Valeria and Ariana would be watching. I dedicate my success to any young women out there who feel trapped. There is always a way out. Never give up. I finished, a small smile on my face. The auction was a triumph. It was held in a prestigious art gallery, broadcast live on national television. My artwork, the pieces I'd created under the pseudonym Phoenix, were displayed in all their glory. The dark, emotional landscapes, the twisted portraits, the abstract forms that pulsed with raw energy, they spoke to people, they resonated, and they sold for exorbitant amounts. Collectors, philanthropists, art lovers, they clamored for my work, driving the prices higher and higher. The piece I was working on when my previous life ended sold for millions. But the centerpiece of the auction was a new painting, one I'd created specifically for this occasion. I titled it Choice. It depicted a faceless girl standing alone, bathed in a soft, ethereal light. In the background, shrouded in shadows, a mother embraced another child, her back to the girl in the light. It was a simple image, but it was powerful, evocative, filled with a quiet, understated grief. When it was time, I stepped onto the stage, the applause thundering around me. I gave a short speech. I talked about my past, about the abuse I'd endured, about the betrayal I'd faced. But I didn't dwell on the pain. I focused on the healing, on the empowerment, on the freedom I'd found through my art. This auction, I said, my voice clear and strong, is dedicated to all the forgotten daughters, to the ones who have been overlooked, underestimated, betrayed, to the ones who have been told they are not good enough, not worthy enough, not loved enough. I talked about the Phoenix Foundation, about the work we would do, about the young artists we would support. I spoke of hope, of resilience, of the power of art to transform lives. And then, the inevitable question. "Ms. Lynn," a reporter called out. What is the meaning of choice? I smiled, a slow, knowing smile. Sometimes, I said, you have to be left behind to learn how to lead yourself forward. I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. But I knew she was there. Valeria, watching the auction on television, her face a mask of despair. She was a broken woman, stripped of her wealth, her status, her illusions. She saw me, her daughter, the one she had discarded, the one she had tried to destroy. And I was radiant, powerful, surrounded by admirers. She finally understood. She understood the magnitude of her mistake, the depth of her loss. She understood that she had chosen the wrong daughter, and that choice had cost her everything. Tears streamed down her face, silent tears of regret, of shame, of utter, unmitigated despair. But I never looked her way. My gaze was fixed on the future, on the light, on the endless possibilities that lay ahead, Italy. It was a new life, a world away from the suffocating opulence and the toxic drama of my past. I settled in a small, picturesque town, nestled in the rolling hills of Tuscany, not far from the vineyard that now belonged to the Phoenix Foundation. My house was simple. Stone walls, terracotta floors, a small garden overflowing with flowers. It wasn't a mansion, it wasn't a statement of wealth. It was a home, a sanctuary, a place where I could finally breathe. I dedicated my days to my art and to the foundation. I painted, I sculpted, I created. The darkness, the pain, it was still there, but it no longer consumed me. And it was a part of my story, yes, but it wasn't the whole story. I was channeling it, transforming it, using it to create something beautiful, something meaningful. The Phoenix Foundation thrived. We supported young artists from all over the world, providing them with scholarships, mentorships, and opportunities to showcase their work. I saw myself in them, in their hunger, their passion, their vulnerability. And I knew that I was making a difference, that I was helping them to avoid the pain, the betrayal that I had endured. I became known. Celeste Rowan, the artist who had risen from the ashes, the woman who had turned her pain into power. My work was celebrated, exhibited in galleries around the world, praised for its emotional depth, its raw honesty, its powerful message of hope and resilience. But the fame, the recognition, it didn't matter, not really. What mattered was the work itself, the act of creation, the connection I felt with the young artists I was helping. What mattered was the peace I had finally found, the quiet contentment of a life lived on my own terms. Then the letter arrived. It was years later. I was sitting in my garden, enjoying the warm afternoon sun, a cup of tea at my side. The postman, a friendly, elderly man who always greeted me with a smile, handed me a small stack of mail, and there it was. An envelope with my mother's handwriting. Valeria. I hadn't heard from her, not directly, in years. I knew from occasional news reports that she and Ariana were living a drastically reduced existence, struggling to make ends meet. They'd become a cautionary tale, a symbol of the fleeting nature of wealth and the corrosive power of greed. I held the letter in my hands, my heart strangely calm. There was no surge of anger, no flicker of fear, no lingering trace of the desperate longing for a mother's love that had once consumed me. I opened the envelope. The letter inside was rambling, incoherent, a jumble of self-pity, recriminations, and desperate pleas. She begged for forgiveness, for reconciliation. She claimed she'd changed, that she'd realized the error of her ways. She hinted at financial difficulties, at her failing health, at her loneliness. "Please come home, Celeste," the final line read, the words scrawled in a shaky hand. "Please, I need you." I read the letter once, my expression unreadable. Then I stood up, walked over to the fireplace, and threw it into the flames. I watched it burn. The paper curled and blackened, the ink turning to ash. The words, the pleas, the desperate cries for help, they vanished into smoke. I felt no anger, no sadness, no regret. Just a profound sense of closure, a quiet, definitive severing of the last remaining tie to my past. The wounds, they were still there, of course. Some wounds never truly heal. The scars remained, a permanent reminder of the pain I'd endured. But they didn't define me. They weren't the whole story. Some wounds never truly heal, I thought, looking out at the sun-drenched hills, at the vibrant colors of my garden, at the life I had built for myself. But they don't have to define you. You can choose to rise above them, you can choose to be free. And I had. I had chosen freedom, and I would never look back.